Yes, today I'm going to tell you something about one single river. I think this is a good opening for the river session about one river. But that's quite some river. It's a big river system up in the north, and I'm going to tell you about the population or sub-population specific monitoring and management system of this system. In the first picture you can see the river and one of the very famous fishing spots, and two of my sons are actually waiting for the opportunity to go fishing. This is an area up in the north on the 70 northern latitude on the border of northern Norway and northern Finland. Very few people in the catchment, but 3 languages. First of all, this is in the heart of the indigenous Sami culture. So the Sami language is very prominent there, and the river is Teatno in the Sami language. On the other side of the river, there's Finland. Other side of the river is Norway, so we have 3 different names for this one large system. This is more than 16,000 square kilometers in catchment size, more than 1,200 kilometers of accessible stretches for Atlantic salmon across the different tributaries and the large main stem. It has produced huge salmon populations and catches until these days. Long-term average is more than 100 metric tons of catch from that one single river per year, varying between, say, 60, 70 tons up to 250 metric tons of catch. And the record year was actually in early 2000, so I'm not talking about centuries ago. This is quite recent figure. It has many tributaries with the summer populations, and it's running to the Barents Sea through the Tana Fjord in Norway. The life history variation of the Teno salmon is quite extraordinary. We have smolt ages ranging from 2 to 8 within this one single river system, and the maiden sea ages ranging from 1 to 5 sea winter fish. So yes, we still have those 4 and 5 sea winter crocodiles in the river. And then we have a huge variety of different types of repeat spawners, the alternate and consecutive previous spawners, and all this is a huge mix of life histories, which makes it very diverse, and it's a pain for population model. So Olivia, this is bad news. We have seen actually 120 different life history combinations of smolt ages, sea ages, and different types of repeat spawners in this river system. And it's not just about life history variation, there's also a very wide variation in genetic structure. There are very big differences, genetic distinct populations in different tributaries. We have detected something like close to 30 different genetically distinct populations in the system, and this flowery picture shows you some kind of illustration of that in different tributaries and tributaries to tributaries and so forth. So you can see that kind of groups of populations within the system. So this is the basis for our population-specific monitoring and management, obviously. Also, the human activity in the area is quite diverse. There is very diverse fisheries. There are still traditional Sami nets and weirs, drift nets at use in the river. All kinds of angling, both from the boat and fly fishing. Local people are angling, and then there's quite an extensive tourist industry. Guiding, selling licenses, renting boats, and so forth. So this is a difficult system to monitor. 2 countries and all kinds of user groups and different types of rights for fishing. Lots of interest. We are monitoring the system and the different populations in different ways. We have started some of our monitoring programs in the 70s. So it's close to 50 years now. We have collected fairly detailed catch information and catch samples. We have permanent electrofishing sites operated since late 70s. Same areas, same time of the year, same method every year. We have some video monitoring of some tributaries of ascending salmon and descending smolts, started in early 2000, that's almost 20 years now. Some snorkeling counts in smaller tributaries, almost 20 years now. And then there are various sonar counts in different parts of the system, including the large mainstem. That's not the long time series so far, but it's building up. And then we have the genetic assignment of the stock of origin of the mixed stock catches in the mainstem. I'm coming back to these because these are the important components in the monitoring and management system. Sometimes the local people are blaming us and saying that you only know about the dead fish, you only ask about the catches, and that's all you know, and we are lying to you anyway. So, I mean, that's not going to be very, very, very precise information. We are actually counting a live fish quite a lot. That's an example from the 2 past years, 2020, 21. We have operated several sonar stations in the system, several video camera arrays, and done some snorkeling surveys in different tributaries. So it's not just the falsified catch information. NASCO, the NASCO principles for management of Atlantic salmon population says that the management should be population specific, it should be target based, and it should be science-based, based on real knowledge, real numbers, and monitoring. What we do at the Teno River is that we have set conservation limits and we assess the attainment of these targets. We are also assessing the mortality of the mixed stock fisheries in the mainstem, because the mainstem fishery is obviously exploiting all these tributary populations in different proportions in different parts of the system. And that is the basis of our management system. Going into some of the details, we established the spawning targets and reported the outcome of that in 2014. The methodology is following the Norwegian method that has been published in primary literature, and the Norwegians are using the same method for pretty much all of their, 400 salmon rivers in the country. We are looking at 23 different tributaries or parts of the mainstem in total that we have established the spawning targets for. And we evaluate currently the target attainment for 14 individual tributaries for the mainstem, and then combine all that into the whole catchment estimate. The way we are evaluating the attainment varies, obviously, between the different parts of the system. In some cases, we have very, very high quality data, which pretty much means that we count every single spawning fish in some of the small tributaries. And that's like first grade data. You know exactly what CH class is, what is the sex ratio, and so forth. But of course, that's exceptional. Then we have data where we have ascending fish, and then we subtract the catch estimate, and we look into the mixed stock fishery in the mainstem and estimate how much of that population has been exploited already in the mainstem fisheries and so forth. And that goes on an annual basis. Then we have some tributaries where we have only some years of counts of fish, which means that it's not an annual, don't have the long-term data, but it's better than nothing. We have some kind of reference points over the years that this many fish actually ascended and this many fish were caught, so the exploitation rate is somehow known, or we can estimate that. And then the worst situations, we just have the catch estimate from the tributary or from the mainstem or from both. And of course, that's the worst quality data. But we still try to struggle with some of those in some tiny tributaries. And then we compare this estimated spawning stock with the target. Simple. We try to deal with the mainstem mixed stock fisheries by combining a big puzzle of different bits of data. We have, that's the mainstem, the blue line here. And we have divided that into different sections, and we are collecting all kinds of catch information from those different sections, both from Norway, Finland, local fisheries, tourist fisheries, different fishing gears, different times of the year, and whatever. Then we have the scale samples, the catch samples that we have been collected almost 50 years. And we collect quite a lot of them, basically thousands of them per year, which means that we have quite some collection of scale samples, which is very useful for the genetics as well. We have the basic biological information going with the scale samples. And then we have the genetic data. We have established the baseline first using microsatellites, and then now we have turned into SNPs. And using these reporting groups of the baseline populations, and then we collect the mixed samples and compare them with the baseline. First, we combine the catch information with our scale information, and we come up with a total catch in numbers of salmon in different sea age groups per year. So it's fairly detailed, at least it's an estimate, which is fairly nice for the whole system. Then we combine this information with the genetic data, and the result is the total catch of salmon in this mixed stock fishery in the main stem, divided by different populations of origin, divided by sea age groups in different years, different weeks of the fishing season, different user groups, different gears, and so forth. So this is really detailed and actually goes quite personal sometimes. You can blame some guy saying that your trap is actually fishing that population quite heavily. So it's a bit embarrassing at times. So the genetics is really the basics for all this. As I said, there's a very distinct population structure in the river, and it's fairly easy to actually pick those individual populations from the mixed catches. We know that this structure is temporally stable. We have looked at scale samples from 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, and we see that there's a stable structure, which is good news. It's not just like any snapshot. We also know that there is a population-specific runtime of these different subpopulations in the main stem. So all this together is actually enabling to build some kind of management implications for this population-specific management. For example, this is an example of the use of the mixed stock samples in the main stem. Again, this blue line is the main stem. This is the area where these samples come from. And we are talking about these two headwater populations. This is the Karasjokka, a very large headwater population, and another one, Inarijoki. And here are the results, which means that during the different weeks of the fishing season, these populations have been exploited in this way in the main stem, in this main stem fishery. And we can see, for instance, that for this Karasjokka fish, the very early fishing season and the local net fishing is exploiting the huge majority of all catches based on that population in the main stem. The same goes for the other tributary, the Inarijoki as well, but as you can see, there is a very strong component of angling catch from the main stem for that particular tributary, which means that we can tailor our management actions to try to protect this population by cutting this early net fishery, which is helping this population as well, but then we need to pay attention to the later. This is like late June, early July, these weeks I'm talking about here. We need to look into the tourist angling and the fishing effort and exploitation on that fishery as well. Another example, these are previously spawned salmon in some small tributaries, excluding the big headwaters. And as you might know, some of these small populations, the grills-dominated populations, are really heavily dependent on previous spawners, because those are pretty much the only large fish that are the females that are producing more eggs. And the same pattern, this early drift net fishery, early in the season, the first weeks of June, in the main stem are actually very heavily exploiting the previous spawners of these small populations throughout the system. So again, management action, some regulation for this fishery should help. Based on this kind of information, these are just examples. A new fishery regulation was signed by Finland and Norway 2017 after very, very long and hard and sad and tedious negotiations, as you can imagine. We had the indigenous people and we had the Norwegians and we had everything, and that took some years. And these are the guys to be blamed. This is the officially nominated Finnish-Norwegian Monitoring and Research Group, 2 Norwegian scientists, 2 Finns. We are producing these very boring, long status reports every year. That's our website. If you're interested, just go there and you can see all these reports from the past years. This is the group who is doing these assessments and providing the advice for the bilateral negotiations. A quick overview of the recent situation. This is the spawning target attainments in different tributaries in 2020. Some kind of a traffic light symbols, and as you can see, the situation is pretty bad. Most of the rivers are actually in red, which means that there is less than 40% target attainment in these tributaries. Some are yellow, which is not very good, and even some of these light green are not quite at 100, and these are very small populations, so it's not like a big proportion of the total. And the really worrying thing is that these 3 large headwater tributaries are very important for the entire system, and they are all shining red, doing very bad. The overall pre-fishery abundance before any fishery on the Norwegian coast of the Barents Sea showed that in 2019 and 2020, the pre-fishery abundance of the Teno salmon was already less than the spawning target, which means that there was actually no exploitable surplus in this population complex to start with. So not looking good. The very poor status in 2019-20, and our advice was that you need to do something about it. You need to cut down the exploitation. Again, Norwegian-Finnish negotiations, very difficult discussions, and the managers decided to close all the fisheries in the system, in the fjord, and in the nearby Norwegian coastal area in the Barents Sea. Very historic, first time ever, total ban of salmon fishing in that area. Just imagine the local communities, the indigenous people, the tourist industry, everything. It was a very sad year, and this mighty river was very quiet, very sad. We continued our monitoring, obviously, and the season is still on, so we don't have the final figures. I just picked these very, very fresh from the oven figures from our snorkeling counts from last week. The 2020 was the worst figures ever, and 2021 showed quite some increase. But given that there was no fishery, it doesn't mean that the population or the abundance was actually any better. But anyway, there's a bigger spawning escapement than over the past 2 years. So we are hoping for a better future for this mighty river. Now, some words about this animal. There's been already quite a lot about pink salmon, and I just promised to give a little bit of insights and experiences from the far north. We really should have a Norwegian or Russian scientist talking about these things, but I try to do my best. As many of us know, pink salmon was introduced to the Kola Peninsula during the Soviet era in late 50s. And it originated from the Russian Far East. They changed the donor stock to a northern population in the Magadan area in '85, and that actually kicked off the natural reproduction in the Kola Peninsula rivers and some of the northeast Norwegian rivers. Before that, everything was pretty much based on transferring eggs to the Kola Peninsula and then hatchery releases of juveniles. They stopped the stocking in 2001, and after that, all the production in the area is basically from natural reproduction in the rivers. Then, some developments. On the left-hand side, you can see the map of Norway, and you can see that in recent years, there's been only few rivers showing some records of pink salmon, very small numbers, handful or some tens of individuals in some of those rivers. Same thing in 2015, 2016, not very much, and all of a sudden, 2017, boom. This happened in Norway as well as in many other areas of the North Atlantic. In Norway, they all of a sudden had observations of pink salmon from almost 300 different rivers. And in some rivers in the north, the abundances were huge. There were hundreds or thousands per river. And here is the map from the Norwegian report showing the distribution in 2017, and I guess in most parts since that. In the north, the occurrence of pink salmon was quite similar in 2019 compared to 17. I know that there's been some changes and less pink salmon in some areas further south in 19. But then, this year, 2021, we saw something that you have never ever believed. It was huge, tenfold increase overall, tenfold increase in the abundance of pink salmon in the north. And we saw some crazy figures in some areas, especially in the northeast of Norway. This is the Teno River. We have the estimated catches from the past, dating back to 70s. There were quite some big catches here, more than 3 metric tons of pink salmon in that river. But that all was based on very big stocking on the on the Russian side, which was reflected in some of the northern Norwegian rivers, including the Teno. But since somewhere here, it's been all natural production, and you can see that the catches in this big Teno system have been tens or some hundreds of kilograms per year until 2017, which showed something different. These figures here are estimated numbers of salmon, pink salmon actually ascending the river, and these are sonar counts or estimates of the counts. 2019, we were looking at somewhere close to 5,000, and this year, the estimate today is something like 50,000, so that's tenfold increase. And then the question is, what about 2023? Is that going to be another tenfold increase, and then we are looking at 500,000, or is it going to crash? Or I think Guy said that there's no eradication of this beast, so it's going to stay there, and this is the new normal, so we are just waiting for the next odd year. There were some real figures from Norway, some tiny small streams. They removed like 10,000 or 15,000 or even 20,000 individual pink salmon, and these are small rivers. The Teno is the big one. So 50,000 in this river, it's nothing compared to 20,000 in a tiny creek in the northeast of Norway. So very briefly, some comparisons, some suggestions of the potential interaction between the native Atlantic salmon and the pink salmon. By the way, all these photographs, these are fresh. These are from the Teno River over the past 2 or 3 weeks. So we are digging up the nests and looking at the egg development, and they are already they are almost hatching. It's kind of crazy fast development. I don't know what is going to happen if they hatch now. And it's going to be a very long, dark winter with 1 meter ice on top of the river. So this is interesting to see this first time in my life. Anyway, there are some differences between the species which are probably towards less competition. First of all, pinks are spawning very early. They started spawning in the Teno River early August, which is again crazy timing, at least in my opinion. The Atlantic salmon are at the moment like planning to start their spawning, and the eggs are almost hatching. So I don't know, what are they doing there? This is good news, of course, because if that was vice versa, the pinks could actually destroy the salmon, the Atlantic salmon reds, but this is luckily the other way around. Juvenile pink salmon are migrating to the ocean very soon in the spring when they emerge from the gravel, so they should not be major competition between Atlantic salmon juveniles and pink salmon juveniles. There's a long history of the mutual existence in some of the Kola Peninsula rivers, decades, which means that I have not heard reports of crashing populations of Atlantic salmon in the Kola Peninsula rivers. So I don't know, it's a little bit difficult to get precise information about those two things together in the same rivers, but it seems like we have not seen major declines in populations because of pink salmon. This is a question mark. Then there are other question marks. We don't know much about the pathogens and parasites probably transmitted by the pink salmon. There are some ideas about fairly similar fauna of parasites and things like that, which may not be crucial, but this is an open question. What about juvenile competition if the emerged pink salmon juveniles hang around for a few weeks early in the spring, just when the Atlantic salmon are also emerging? Could it be, if there are like zillions of pink salmon in the same habitats, could that be a crucial part of the life cycle? We don't know. This is all new situation, but this is a potential threat. There could be some competition of space. If you think about some holding pools in the small rivers, only few Atlantic salmon and 10,000 pink salmon all of a sudden in the same place, there could be some fierce competition, we don't know. And then the nutrient loads, of course, which has been referred to several times today already. What is that going to happen? The crucial thing is the scale. When we talk about small rivers, few Atlantic salmon and huge loads of pink salmon, that is the point when we are expecting some issues. The Teno River is a huge river, 50,000 pinks, not a big deal, maybe. So, I mean, 500,000 could be, but I'm really thinking of some of the small tributaries or the small Norwegian rivers which might actually have this great impact. Just for the fun of it, I show you a little bit of video. This is like 2 weeks ago. Me and my colleague, we were diving and looking at the spawning sites of the pinks and tried to look at their behavior in the Teno system. They don't look so nice anymore, but look at these females. The females are fierce. They're very, very aggressive, and they didn't like my GoPro camera at all. So if these guys are occupying the holding pools in a small river with few Atlantic salmon grills in it, I'm not sure what is going to be the outcome of that. Okay, some concluding remarks. We have this fairly unique population-specific monitoring and management system in the Teno, which has already been implemented in the actual practical management through the bilateral agreement between Finland and Norway. The status is currently very low, and very strong actions are needed and have already been put in place. There's been this huge increase in the pink salmon abundance, and now the question is that Atlantic salmon is going down, pink salmon is going up. Are these two things related or not? We don't know. We don't know yet, but this is going to be interesting. Obviously, I'm not alone in this business, so there's lots of people who have helped pulling all this together. So thank you very much.